I just found out my husband's my dad. I wish I was joking when I say story time. Okay, right, so let's go way back. Let's go to the beginning for you to actually even understand this. So obviously I didn't know my dad growing up. He was never ever around, and what my mum did have to say wasn't good. Apparently he just dipped when he found out my mum was pregnant with me, and my mum had a really good job, so she actually never bothered him for like payments or anything like that because she just didn't need it, and obviously just didn't want to be in contact with him. However, growing up I had the best stepdad in the world, who I do call my dad. He came into my life when I was about 3 or 4 years old, so very early on, and he's just been so amazing to both my mum and me. And, oh my god, I just couldn't wish for a better dad in the world. So a few years ago I went on a night out. It's actually really weird because on this night out I told all of my friends I'm gonna find my husband, and I did. A bit more complicated than that now. I went on this night out, I saw this guy was eyeing me up, and one thing I forgot to say is my mum was very young when she had me. She was only 17 years old, and my dad was also the same age. So when I saw this guy eyeing me up, I didn't really think too much of it because there was only like a 17-year age gap, and being 25 at the time really wasn't too deep for me at that time. I went and talked to him, we had a few drinks. So me and Mark had a few dates, we were getting on really well. He eventually like asked me out, and then we got engaged, and that is the point when he first met my mum. And I know you're probably thinking like, how the hell did my mum not recognize her baby dad? And honestly there's a few reasons why. So it's actually really weird because when my mum first met Mark, she did joke and say, oh my god, you look like my baby dad, basically. Kind of creeped me out when she said that. However, we moved. I don't really know him, so it can't be too much daddy issues. Mark actually changed his name, so he didn't have the same name he had when he was getting with my mum. Ew! And he also underwent a bunch of surgeries. Some like cosmetic surgeries because he was insecure, but also some because he did get in a car accident when he was younger. His face really, honestly, did not look the same. It did look like a different person. So we had our whole wedding. Mark's parents did die when he was younger. They couldn't come to the wedding, so that was another indication why my mom just wouldn't recognize him, because he basically had no family. Obviously he legally changed his whole name, like there's nothing there was nothing pointing me to this decision. He decided it was time for us to want to have kids. That was next on our agenda. However, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm a bit of a health freak, so I wanted to do loads of tests just to try and put peace in my mind that our kid was going to be safe. So with all of these tests coming back, there was just a few things that were flagging up, and I was a bit like, why are these so similar? Why a lot genetically was kind of adding up. And one of my best friends is actually a doctor, so she took a look at all of these results for us. She was actually the one doing them, and I will never forget this night because it was only a few nights ago. I know I will never forget this. My friend pulls me aside, he comes around my house, like knowing Mark wasn't in. She basically says like, we need to talk. It isn't a good conversation for us to be having, however it does need to be had. I tell you, when my friend said that Mark is actually my dad, like bursted out laughing. I generally, hand on heart, thought this was a prank. I thought she was like starting a YouTube channel. Like I was like, no way is this girl serious, obviously. So obviously this did take me a few days to process before I even brought it up to Mark. I just kind of left my house, moved back in with my mum, and to be honest I basically ghosted Mark because I was just in shock. I had the conversation with Mark the other day and he told me he knew. I feel disgusted.
Am I the asshole for kicking out my sister-in-law for not helping take care of my kids? My sister-in-law, Emily, got into a really good college, but it's extremely far away from her parents and it's really close to us. So she asked if she could stay with us during this time. We have a really big house, so we would have no issue having her stay with us. I told her that although it was a yes that she could stay with us, she had to help take care of the kids. I told her that she only had to help with the 2 that are in elementary school. I have 6 kids and the eldest are all in middle school. One's almost done with middle school, so they all know how to make their breakfast and they're pretty responsible. And then I would take care of the youngest 2. So she really got the easiest ones of the bunch, and she did agree to take care of the kids. She moved in and I quickly saw how useless she was. She wouldn't make them breakfast, she wouldn't make them lunch, she would bring them to school late. I literally lent her a car and she still would bring them to school late. Kids would constantly complain that she would pick them up from school late, and she had afternoon classes, so she had plenty of time to do what we agreed upon. I tried to talk to her about this and she just kept making excuse after excuse. So after talking to my husband, am I the asshole for kicking out my sister-in-law for not helping take care of my kids? We just decided to kick her out because she was honestly bringing more work than she was helping. She was livid, and that was expected, honestly, but her and my husband got into a huge screaming fight, and this only solidified her never staying with us again, especially when she called me some nice names. She went to stay with her other brother, but he couldn't keep her long because he only had a 1-bedroom apartment, so she did end up having to go back to her parents' house. She also had to switch to online schooling since she couldn't commute there every day. My in-laws have given us a considerable amount of shit, especially me specifically, for ruining her college life. They're blaming us for her not being able to experience the full extent of the college life. My sister-in-law called me a cold, heartless bitch for kicking her out. My husband has been standing up for me completely, and he completely stopped funding her education after she doubled down on all of her comments on social media, and now she only has her parents to rely on and loans. I really don't think that we're in the wrong for kicking her out because she agreed to do something in exchange for getting to use the car whenever she wants, a laptop, paid for groceries, and so many more things. So am I the asshole for kicking her out?
Am I the asshole for sleeping naked on top of the covers to teach my flatmate's girlfriend a lesson? So I, 21 male, live with my childhood best friend, 22 male, and I've done so for 2 years now. Up until last week, things have been perfect between us. However, he recently got a new girlfriend, 23 female, and she honestly seems absolutely great except for one thing. She seemingly has a complete aversion to knocking. She and I have quite a lot in common, and I actually like spending time with her. However, it bugs the hell out of me when she just barges into my room without knocking first. Now, she's never walked in on me doing anything. I'm usually just chilling on my bed or studying at my desk. However, on at least 7 separate occasions, now she's done it first thing in the morning to ask if I want coffee. I sleep naked. Every time prior to the last one, I've been under the covers and she hasn't seen anything. I always point out that she could have, and she just giggles and says, but I didn't. When she stayed over last week, in order to make my point, I intentionally slept on top of the covers. Sure enough, she barges in at 7 a.m., begins to ask if I want coffee, and sees my you-know-what. She immediately backed out of the room and didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. My mate later pulled me aside and said I was baying out of order, accused me of deliberately exposing myself, and pointed out that I'd threatened to do it before. I literally just said, okay, but what if I had no covers and you saw everything before? Now they're framing this to others that I'm some sort of sick creep who intentionally got naked and lay in wait of her because that's how I get my rocks off. And I'm kind of seeing how it came off that way. Am I the asshole for doing this?
Am I the asshole for telling my best friend's boyfriend that she baby trapped him? Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. I, 25 female, am in love with my best friend's boyfriend, Stan, 26 male. But to be fair, I met him first. I met my best friend freshman year of college. We were roommates. I never really had a best friend growing up or even in high school, so I was excited to see how things would go with my roommate. She was the best thing that ever happened to me. I finally got my best friend. A year ago, I met Stan at work. I tried hard to keep him under wraps because I was so scared that she would want him and take him. It's happened so many times before. I would meet someone, she would pop up, and it's like they would fall under her spell. One night, Stan and I went for drinks after work at a nearby bar, and Jess happened to stop by, and poof. There went the last 6 months we spent together. She never asked me if anything was going on between us, and I was so hurt I never mentioned anything. 2 weeks ago, Jessica announced that she was pregnant. It seemed rather quick, but Stan was so entranced by her, it seemed like they would get by just fine. Yesterday, while I was at Jessica's place, I asked to borrow some sweats because it was getting uncomfortable in my jeans, and she told me to get them myself. In the drawer under the pants, I saw at least 6 different bottles of follicle-stimulating hormones. I must have been staring at them for a long time because Jessica came into the room to see what was taking me so long. I've never seen her look so horrified, but rather than explain what I had just found, she quickly grabbed the bottles and dumped them into the small trash can in the room. She looked at me and said, "As my best friend, it is your duty to keep this to yourself." My duty. Part 2. Am I the asshole for telling my best friend's boyfriend that she baby trapped him? Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. She just looked at me and said, "As my best friend, it is your duty to keep this to yourself." My duty. Like I'm a little soldier. She told me that if he knew the truth, he could leave her, and that it would be my fault if I broke them up while she was pregnant. She told me not to let my little crush on him cloud my judgment and ruin their blessing. I didn't listen to anything else she had to say. I just grabbed my stuff and walked out. I honestly didn't know what was going through my head, but next thing I know, I found myself in front of Stan's door, knocking until he opened the door. I almost hit him in the face. I just blurted everything out. He stood there looking like someone had knocked the air out of him, and I told him that I had to let him know because I was in love with him, and I had been in love with him, but I didn't realize it until the day she walked into that bar 6 months ago. He didn't say anything, he just stood there, and I was so mortified that I walked away. I didn't bother going back to my place, just in case anyone went looking for me there. I booked a hotel a few hours away and drove straight there. I've had dozens of missed calls and texts, and I know that Stan broke up with Jessica, and that she blames me for telling him. Stan even called and texted me to call him back. But I don't know what to do. My emotions got the better of me, and honestly, I just want to never return. I should say this. The day I found out Jessica was pregnant, my boss offered me a promotion. It would be in another city a few hours away. I was hesitant at first because I felt like I couldn't abandon my best friend. But now I've just ruined everything with the two people that mattered most to me, and I'm honestly thinking of taking it and not coming back. So am I the asshole? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Revenge against my neighbor never felt so sweet. New neighbors moved in about 2 months ago, a young couple. The walls are paper thin and they love to blast music and sing really loud, but they sound horrible. Their bathroom is right against my bedroom wall, and they'll sing at the top of their lungs at 3 a.m. or when I'm in a Teams meeting. I've asked them if they could keep it down multiple times, but they just ignored me and called me an asshole for having a problem with them being happy and singing. Or told me to get a pair of noise-canceling headphones. I felt like they had no respect for their neighbors because the other guy next to them doesn't want to hear them screeching at the top of their lungs either. So yesterday I borrowed a pair of speaker towers from my buddy and pressed them against the wall facing the wall. Put it on full blast and started playing Bird is the Word on repeat from 8 a.m. sharp when there's no noise ordinance against noise. The wall even trembles. I definitely woke them up after their late night yesterday. Every time the song ends, I could hear them banging against the wall telling me to shut up. They came knocking on my door extremely pissed off, and I just told them, "What kind of asshole are you that you don't like music?" and slammed the door. I'll keep blasting Bird is the Word until 10 p.m. and start up at 8 a.m. sharp tomorrow. I'll then cool it and see if they stop screeching moving forward.
Guys, I only got hired because I'm dating my boss, and now I think I'm about to get fired. Story time. So me and Mark did start dating before I got my job. The way we met is pretty normal. We met at a cafe. He asked me for my number. We just started talking and then we started dating. And as we started to get to know each other, I was made redundant, so I was out of a job and I was finding it really, really hard to find another one. I work in sales and finance. So as I was finding it really hard to find a job, Mark offered me a place at his sales firm. Mark is basically the CEO at this company. He's worked really, really hard to get where he is. I felt so guilty taking his job. However, I really did need a job. To be fair, everything was going really good. Considering my boss was my boyfriend, no, it didn't cause any friction at all. We were really, really happy. The one thing I didn't mention about Mark is the age gap between us. Now, obviously, he is a COO of a company, so he's definitely not a young chap. And everybody at this firm, literally everybody, over 40 years old. Except for me and this one guy. Let's name him Callum. So me and Callum were actually a year apart, so really, really well. We could relate to a lot of stuff each other was saying. I don't know, we just ended up becoming closer and closer as time went on. And this really, really annoyed Mark. Mark is really possessive and just over protective. Genuinely, this has been something that has always caused a bit of friction between us because he always tell me like when and where I can go, what I can and can't wear. Like, always been an issue from day dot. Mark actually couldn't attend our Christmas party last year and I went on my own. This was my third Christmas party with the company, and that meant me and Callum were going to be like basically on our own because we were not about to hang out with the 50-year-olds. 50-year-olds also love to gossip. We weren't going to hang out with them because we already know the rumours that were going around the office that weren't true until that night. But as the night went on, me and Callum just got even closer and closer, and we did end up kissing. No one saw us kiss, and that's all that happened. Nothing went any further. To be fair, the kiss like meant something to both of us, like just kind of came at a bad time. And as I said, everybody in our office loves to gossip, and I thought no one saw me and Callum kiss. However, I was wrong. Saw us, and someone obviously told Mark before I got a chance to. I'm gonna go home that night and talk to Mark about it. However, when I got home, he already knew. Obviously, we had a huge argument and we actually stopped talking for a few days. By the time Monday rolled around, I got into work like normal. I saw I had a performance review meeting with Mark, one from HR, let's just call her Helen. So Helen, me and Mark were both all scheduled to be on this call. I really didn't know what this call was going to be about because we have a chart in our office and I'm the top performer, so I really weren't sure why I was having a performance review. However, I got on this meeting. This is the first time I had spoken to Mark in 3 days. Mark fired me. Yeah, basically fired me due to poor performance, which we all know isn't true. For the past 3 years, I've been the top performer in that office. That is how I got hired and fired within 3 years, both by my boss to be my boyfriend.
Am I the asshole for kicking my mother-in-law out of our home and telling her to stop meddling in our marriage? I'm married to my amazing husband. We've been together for 3 years and officially married for 1, and everything in our marriage has been absolutely amazing. We have a wonderful marriage, except for one glaring issue, and that is my mother-in-law. From the very beginning, she's been extremely overbearing. She has the habit of calling my husband every single day to check in. It started off as a pretty mild annoyance, but it has grown to an unbearable level of annoyance. She insists on knowing everything about our lives, from finances to what we're doing on the weekends. She even gave my husband a key to her house in case he needs to come home. Recently, it all came to a head when she showed up unannounced at our house while we were having a quiet dinner together. We gave her a spare key to our house, which was a big mistake. She started picking everything apart. She criticized my cooking, saying no wonder my husband looked miserable because of the garbage that I serve. She even started inspecting the house, pointing out imaginary dirt everywhere, saying that she needs to teach me how to clean properly. Am I the asshole for kicking my mother-in-law out of our home and telling her to stop meddling in our marriage? She started making comments on our finances, saying that I spend all my husband's money and that I'm a gold digger. She even suggested that my husband separate our finances to protect himself, and the funny thing is that we make a relatively similar amount. She made it extremely clear that she thought that I wasn't good enough for him, and even mentioned saying that she had a girl at church that would make a way better wife than I was. And I know exactly who my mother-in-law is talking about because she introduced me to her once at church, and she literally has everything that my mother-in-law would want for my husband to have in his life as a wife. Even the husband works and provides and the wife stays home mindset. At that point, I reached my breaking point, and I just told her very bluntly that she needs to stop meddling in our marriage because her constant meddling is making our relationship a lot harder. She immediately burst into tears and she stormed off and just left our house. And now my husband is mad at me for hurting his mom's feelings, but I just could not take it anymore. He said that I was overreacting, but I want to know, am I the asshole and was I overreacting?
My wife baby trapped me. So my wife, 32 female, and I, 34 male, have been together for 8 years. We have a little girl, 5 female, and a baby boy, 2 male. I love both of them more than anything, and I feel like I have everything. A beautiful wife, 2 healthy kids, a great career, and a big house. The token American dream minus the dog. I'm allergic. When we talked about kids before, my wife always said she wanted 2. I only wanted 1. It would be easier and we'd have more money for vacations and stuff, but my wife maintained it's important for a child to have a sibling. I grew up with 4 and my wife with none, so I guess I understand where she's coming from. After our son and getting through the baby years and sleepless nights for the second time, I didn't want to ever go through that again. Both kids were very fussy and colicky, but when he was a year old, my wife began casually mentioning a third. I would laugh it off, but she finally sat me down and said we have to have a third. I said no. We agreed on 2, but she wanted 4, and 3 is the compromise. I refused and said I wanted 1 and we have 2. She got angry and called me selfish for taking away her dream of wanting a big family. A couple days later, she apologized and we had sex. I noticed her drive increase exponentially, but so did mine, and I was happy to engage her. She was on birth control, I had a condom. It was all good. Thinking back on it, I probably should have figured something was up, but I was barely handling 2 little kids and work on top of housework and yard work and everything. I came home from work one day while the kids were at their grandparents'. My wife had a huge smile on her face and she sat me down and showed me a positive pregnancy test, literally dancing in joy. My first thought was, oh shit. My wife noticed a less than happy expression on my face and started screaming at me. She berated me for not being supportive, and this is a miracle from God, and I should be grateful. I said I was sorry and hugged her and said that I was super excited for the baby. My wife was delighted, and later that night she was calling all family and friends to happily tell them the news. When she was talking about the nursery and how we'll convert my office into a room, I started to get a little suspicious. Everything was so well thought out, and it seemed like she'd been planning this for a while. When she was asleep, I took the condoms out of the cupboard and ran them underwater. Holes. I nabbed her phone and saw she'd set a password. That was odd. Nevertheless, my wife has a terrible memory, so I tried her birthday and it opened. Further up were text messages from her best friend of my wife complaining how I wouldn't come around. Her best friend suggested arrange an accident with a winky face. My wife agreed and said she was going to come off of birth control. It went on for a little while, ending with my wife saying yes, we were going to have a third. So I woke her up immediately and asked if this had really been a miracle. She got that deer in the headlights look and burst into tears. She wailed and then she got angry. Through tears she screamed, I had no right to go through her phone and it's her choice whether or not she wants to take birth control. The side effects are bad and she was sick. She also brought up if I really didn't want a third kid, I should have had a vasectomy. She told me to go sleep on the couch. I laughed out loud and said no, I'm sleeping here, you're leaving. So while wailing, she packed a bag and left it to her parents. When she called the next day, I told her I just need some time to myself. She said that's fine, but I need to come around for our child. I told her I wasn't sure if it would be our child, and she cried more. It's been 2 weeks since then. Government recommends to stay at home, and I knew staying home by myself while also working with 2 kids would not be ideal, and she would want to see her kids. So we're in the same house. She constantly keeps on stopping me and trying to get me excited for our kid and planning the nursery and names, and how happy our kids will be to get a younger sibling. I've been ignoring her entirely. What do? Staying home with her is bad enough, and I don't know if I should leave her over this. I don't trust her anymore. She's entirely betrayed it. I'm angry. But I have another child on the way.
My dog destroyed my marriage. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. Let me start off by saying I'm an animal lover. I had a dog, Chloe, growing up, and she was my best friend. So as much as it pains me to blame the dog, I know that when we got her, our marriage began its countdown. We adopted our dog, let's call her Chloe 2, from a litter of puppies down at our local animal shelter. She was a yellow lab. She was copy-paste my beautiful Chloe. I was against getting her at first because I knew it would seem like I was trying to replace her. My husband insisted, so we adopted her. Now, if you've never raised a puppy, the beginning stages can be compared to that of the newborn baby stage. The sleepless nights, constantly waking up in the middle of the night to take her outside to go to the bathroom. When Chloe 2 was about 6 months, I approached my husband about sending her off to puppy boarding school to be trained in a 6-week program. My husband was completely against it, but I persisted because at 6 months, she was still having accidents in the house and she was chewing up the furniture and the shoes. My husband thought it would be sufficient to have her attend classes at our local pet store. It shouldn't have been that big of a deal, but for some reason this fight blew up even bigger than it needed to be. We had the same argument when she turned 1. Not only was Chloe 2 not fully potty trained, but she was destroying everything in the house. And I'm not exaggerating. We had to child-proof the fridge because she learned how to open the fridge door and would eat what she could get her paws on. Trash had to go directly into the bin outside because she would get into that. And we had to take her to the vet multiple times for broken or bleeding teeth. Part 2. My dog destroyed my marriage. Disclaimer, this is not my story. I will list the source in the caption of this video. We had to take her to the vet multiple times for broken or bleeding teeth, where she would try to bite out of her crate because she refused to stay in it when we were at work. But we couldn't let her stay in the backyard because she would dig a hole and pop up in our neighbors' yards all the time, and it cost us thousands in repairs. During this time, we received 2 letters from our city due to the disturbance she was causing. But still, my husband refused to send her to be properly trained. My final straw was when she broke the urn that held my mother's ashes and ate them. I told my husband either we send her off to obedience school or we take her back to the shelter. A few days later, he left out of town for a business trip. But since he kept disregarding my feelings on the subject and had given me the silent treatment before he left, I took Chloe back to the shelter, paid the fee to surrender her, and went home. The next few days were so peaceful without Chloe 2 and my husband. A few days later, when my husband returned, I told him what I had done, and it started a huge argument, followed by him leaving to go see if she was still available at the shelter I dropped her off at. She wasn't. I've never seen him so devastated, but I can honestly say I don't regret surrendering her. A week after that, my husband served me with divorce papers. His reasoning was if I couldn't handle a puppy and would give it away when it didn't behave the way I wanted it to, what would I do to any children we could have? I tried many times to make amends with my husband before I finally signed off on the divorce proceedings. I could have never imagined our differences on something so small could lead to the end of us after 7 years.
A lady refused to cut my hair based on my appearance. For context, I like to wear my clothes until they're worn out. I have money, but I don't really spend it unless I really want to or need to. Money usually goes towards my groceries, bills, etc. My clothes don't look torn apart, but you can tell they're old. I wear old pants, old shoes, old shirts, all clean, just well worn. I decided to go to a salon for the first time just out of curiosity. I usually cut my own hair, but I wanted to try something new. I signed in, sat down, and waited. The lady, who I assumed was going to be the original person to cut my hair, takes a glance at me and turns around to one of her coworkers. Without even lowering her voice, tells her I'm not cutting her hair. I walked in with very clean hair. I was clean. My hair is kind of short, and it was all brushed out and good before I walked in. She continued telling me she didn't want to cut my hair because I was cheap and was thought she'd be lucky to get free stuff out here. I didn't know they did free things for newcomers anyway. I just wanted a haircut, you know? Well, her coworker cuts my hair instead. We have a nice talk and I end up with a lovely haircut. She was one of the sweetest people I've ever met. On top of paying for my haircut, I look at her and tell her, "Here, I want you to have this. This is yours. Don't give it to anyone else." And give her a $50 tip. The other woman saw all of that and looked angry as hell. The lady who cut my hair thanked me and she looked overjoyed. That was the best $50 I've ever spent. Seeing the first woman's angry expression made my whole year. I'm not so cheap after all.
I've been getting with every single guy in my office, and here's how they found out about each other. Storytime. So I am a PA for a huge company, and obviously I am the PA for the CEO of the company. However, with my job title, that also means I am a PA to everyone that works there. So I help them get their lunches, I help them get coffees, book meetings, and all that sort of stuff. But in my office, that is kind of full of sales, finance, accountants, all of that sort of department. It's a very young office, believe it or not. And what can I say? I love boys. As soon as I walked in this office and saw a bunch of boys my age, I was like, thank the Lord, because this is a bit of me. I'm not going to sit here and lie. Okay, so this all started because at a work party. Like, I know this is so cliche, but I'm kind of talking to this one guy, let's call him Mark, and he was the first guy I talked to in that office. And to be fair, me and Mark just got on so well, and we still do, but we both made it very clear we just didn't want relationship. But I don't know if I'm being crazy, but I just felt like every single guy kept on flirting with me. I don't even know how to tell this story, but I basically just started making my way around the guys, basically. So sometimes it would happen on a night out, sometimes it would happen at a work party. However, no one really knew that this was happening about each other, if that makes sense. So some of the guys like I ended up getting with, they would have no idea I also got with the person they sit next to, and they all acted really possessive whilst I was in the office. I would literally walk into that office every single day knowing I've gotten with basically every single guy there, and none of them knew this. It was kept a secret until it wasn't, basically. So I was chatting to Mark, who was kind of like the best out of all of them, just in terms of like how he treated me, our relationship. Like, he was never possessive and he totally knew it was literally just a casual thing. Me and him were basically joking about a night we had a few nights ago together, but as we were doing this, one of the other guys tried to get me a cup of coffee. So he obviously heard me and Mark joking about, you know, and he got super upset, and he was like, I didn't know you were doing it with Mark as well. And as he said that, another guy heard, who I had also been with, and it kind of kept on going like that. I have never wanted the ground to swallow me up more in my whole entire life. I literally had to say to them all, like, I never said this was special between any of us. Made it very clear that I did not want a relationship and we were not exclusive. I said, in reality, your egos are just hurt. Only person out of all of this thing didn't react was Mark. I'm not gonna lie to you, it made me slightly more attracted to him because I thought that was so mature. He understood what we talked about before we, you know, I think that means more to me than I think.
I walked in on my husband wearing a diaper and acting like a child. Where do we go from here? My husband has been acting very strange lately. I noticed a few months ago when we were at the grocery store, he would buy a bunch of things that were geared towards children, like stuffed animals and toys and candies that he had previously said are only for children, and just things like that. He'd also go out of his way to get kids' meals at restaurants, but it wasn't every day and it wasn't a lot, so I just kind of brushed it off and thought maybe he's finally giving in to what he really wanted when he was a child, because he had a really rough childhood growing up. Both of his parents were abusive and parentified him, and he's currently in therapy for that. Then he started pulling away from me at home, and he would start spending time alone in our bedroom, saying that he was napping, and he would lock the door. But I could hear voices in there, so I knew that he wasn't napping. He stopped leaving his phone out, and he changed his password, and when I asked him about it, because I had to use his phone to make a call, he couldn't even explain. He also started to constantly push me to go places without him, to leave him in the house alone. I walked in on my husband wearing a diaper and acting like a child. Where do we go from here? I thought he was cheating, and maybe a younger woman brought out new feelings in him, making him want to be a kid again. So today I went to the gym, as I always do, but this time I left my phone at home. I drove all the way there hoping to make him think that it was just a normal visit with the timing, and then I came back. When I walked in on my husband sitting there with a kid's cartoon on, and he had a pacifier in his mouth and a pull-up diaper on. I don't think that he heard the door opening when I came in, but he turned around when I came inside and he looked absolutely terrified. That's really the only word that I can think to use. He just looked afraid of me, and he immediately got up and pulled his pacifier out of his mouth, and he tried to start to explain. But I told him that I just needed some space before we talked about everything, and before you knew it, I was out the door. I'm at my sister's house now, and I told her that we had gotten in a fight, but I didn't tell her what it was about. My husband has been texting me nonstop and calling me and asking me to come home, but I haven't responded, and I just don't know what to do.
Guys, my family is well and truly stressing out because I've well and truly fallen in love with my stalker. Story time. So about 2 years ago, I developed a stalker, and this was extremely terrifying, especially because of who the stalker was. Now, I've never been super private about my life. I've always been very street smart and like never put my address anywhere or anything like that. So this stalker actually knew me. When I was at primary school, we had this teacher who was just really strange. He actually ended up getting fired when I was in year 8, so I weren't at the school anymore, but obviously everyone knew about this. He got fired for the most craziest reasons. You can probably imagine he's in primary school, and you know, it should have been a lot more than just a firing of a job. However, this teacher, who we'll just call Mark, he went quiet. Nobody knew what he was doing, nobody knew like where he was, and I always remember just being a bit creeped out by him, because even at primary school he was like basically borderline obsessed with me. Like he would constantly ask how I was doing, making sure my grades were okay. Like when my grades were slipping a bit, I found school really hard. He was like super concerned. I wanted to do extra tuition with me, even though I was literally in primary school. But he never ever made like inappropriate comments or anything like that. So me and my family really just thought he was just concerned. Like we don't know. We weren't sure what the sitch was. Anyway, about 2 years ago, I received this really strange letter, which one on its own is weird enough because I don't receive letters. I'm not at the age where my friends send me letters. Like it's just not a normal thing for me at all. And when I opened this letter, the contents of it was scary. It basically had a bunch of photos from when I was at primary school, and I genuinely don't want to repeat what was on this letter. Basically really creepy, and just saying they've been watching me for years and years and they love who I've blossomed into. Like I've blossomed into a beautiful woman. Really creepy stuff with photos of me as a kid at primary school. Obviously we took this straight to the police, and they said they can try their best to track it, but there's just kind of no way that possibly can happen. And to be fair, for the past 2 years it hasn't been horrendous. It's just been really creepy. You get one letter every 2 months, and the contents would be very similar to that in terms of just complimenting me and just saying how beautiful I was. So in the past 6 months there has been one time where my stalker slipped up. He mentioned some details about me that only a teacher would know, but then we were able to narrow it down, and we realised it was Mark, my old primary school teacher, was sending me these letters. And obviously we were all just so creeped out. However, when I found out who it was, obviously my parents wanted to press charges, as the police were obviously asking like, we can arrest him, we can get him done for stalking, we can get him done for like harassment and stuff like this. And she told my parents immediately. I was like, wait, can we just leave this for a second? Because I was more creeped out because I didn't know who it was. Behind my parents and the police's back, I went up and meted Mark, which I know is a stupid idea because anything could have happened. However, I honestly wanted to hear him out and have him explain why he was just sending me these really creepy messages. Basically, me and Mark have grown really close in the past 6 months. So close that I've actually asked the police to drop any charges, any cases they have against him. Didn't find any other like cases with him. Like he wasn't doing this to anyone else. It was just me. At my request, they were able to press any charges. Honestly, I think I'm in love with Mark.
Am I the asshole for giving my mother-in-law a fake copy of my house key and exposing her on Christmas dinner? I want to preface this by saying that I, female 34, married my husband, male 37, a year ago. His mom is Snoopy and annoying as fuck. She can't help it that this is just how she is, as my dear in-laws say. My husband and I purchased a new house recently. My mother-in-law kept pushing to get an emergency key. She promised that she would only use it in an emergency, but given the fact that she had an emergency key to our old apartment and just walked in on us being intimate twice. But my husband didn't think it was a big deal. I just couldn't trust her, so I just sent her a fake key after she kept pushing, and she had a smug on her face after I hand-delivered it to her. Days gone by, and on Christmas dinner, mother-in-law angrily called me out on the fact that I gave her a fake copy of the house key. She shamed me for doing this in front of everyone, but in my defense, I asked her how she found out, and she said days ago when she came over at 4 while my husband and I were out. I reminded her, didn't you promise you wouldn't use it unless there's an emergency? So you tried to get in when there was no emergency, and you broke the promise you made to us. She looked red in the face, and the other family started staring, and some even laughed at her for the face she made. She suddenly got up from her seat and rushed into the kitchen, where she had a huge meltdown so loud the next-door neighbors must have heard. Literally, I've never heard a 60-plus-year-old woman throw a tantrum like that. Needless to say, dinner went awkward, and my husband and sister were giving me looks. My husband went off on me in the car, said I lied and manipulated and humiliated and exposed his mom, and said he wouldn't have let me get away with this if he had known. We had an argument, and he is demanding I apologize to his mom for my childish behavior and for ruining Christmas dinner for the whole family. Am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for pawning my engagement ring? Disclaimer, this is not my story. This is an anonymous submission. I, 32 female, got engaged to my fiance, 36 male, last Christmas. I spent the last year planning our perfect wedding, and we had discussed marriage many times over the last 10 years, as well as our stances on having children. My fiance wanted us to remain child-free, and because I loved him so much, this was something I was willing to do. So you can only imagine my shock when a few months before our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. We had both taken the proper precaution, and I was extremely nervous to let my fiance know, but I knew this was something that we would have to decide together. To say he was upset would be an understatement. He was absolutely livid. He couldn't understand how I could let something like this happen. I couldn't believe he would actually say something like that to me, because he knew I was on birth control, and I mean, come on, he's 36. How is he going to act like a teenager and try to place all of the blame on me? After an intense discussion, it came out that one night the condom broke, and he didn't tell me because he thought my birth control would be enough. Not realizing this all could have been avoided had he let me know, so I could have taken a plan B. The next morning at breakfast, he asked me if I wanted him to go with me to get it taken care of, and I looked at him really shocked, and I let him know I had no intentions of doing that. He let me know I was no longer welcome in our home until I took care of it, and I have an hour to get my things. If not, he would call the authorities to have me forcibly removed. So I packed my bags and left. 3 days passed and he had not Part 2. Am I the asshole for pawning my engagement ring? Disclaimer, this is not my story. This is an anonymous submission. 3 days passed and he had not reached out to me, so I took it upon myself to assume that we were over. I won't lie, I cried. I cried so much in those 3 days, but I knew my baby didn't deserve that, so I let myself have just those 3 days, then I went out to apply for apartments. I'll assume he saw the bank statements and the transactions for application fees. I was lucky enough to have gone to the bank to get a blank money order that would cover the first month as well as the deposit, because when I went to get myself a cup of coffee, my card was declined. I tried logging onto my banking app and saw that the money from our joint account had been moved. I called him only to be met with a generic voice, letting me know that his voicemail was full. I was so enraged I went directly to his job. He let me know that he moved the money for my safety. He told me he wouldn't want someone to take advantage of me or to have me spend it all in a foolish way, and that when I came home, he would be more than happy to transfer it back. I was absolutely disgusted by his words. I literally felt sick. I've never seen this side to him, and now I was absolutely broke until next week when I got paid, unless he managed to transfer that money out of the account before I could make it to my bank to withdraw it. The only thing that came to mind was to sell my engagement ring. We both designed this and it cost him a little over $40K. I didn't get nearly as much as we paid for it. The kind jeweler gave me 24 hours before he reported back to my fiance that I sold the diamond. He and his family laid into me when they found out. They called me a gold digger, a thief, and many other names. I just shut off my phone. So, am I the asshole? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
I need to tell you about how I've got in this position where I'm about to go on a date with my stepfather. Story time. So my mum and my dad, obviously they got a divorce when I was super young. I actually barely know my dad, not because he is a happy father. So my dad is actually in the army, so obviously he's away a lot, and that's why I basically barely know him, because he's just never here. So my mum met my stepdad, who we will just call Mark, when I was 7 years old. To be honest, they were really good together. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. However, their age gap was always just a bit weird to me. So my mum and dad had me really late. I am their only child, and they really did struggle with kids. So they were approaching their 40s when they had me. So obviously that makes my mum about 45 when she met Mark. Mark was 20. That always creeped me out. There was less of an age gap between me and Mark than there was Mark and my mum. However, they were really happy for about 10 or 11 years. And then at that point, things just started to get a little bit rocky between both my mum and Mark. And this whole time, never had a proper relationship with Mark in terms of their father-daughter relationship, because I knew my dad. dad. I don't know, I just never saw Mark as a father figure at all. And obviously as I got older, that age gap between me and him less big. So when my mum and Mark started to hit the rocks, me and Mark were close as friends, because Mark was also basically a teaching assistant, so he was at my school. We did a lot of school runs together. He was like just constantly with me, really. Then I was 20, my mum and Mark decided to split up, and they were never married, they were just kind of together, so it was never like a messy divorce or anything like that. To be fair, I still travelled to school with Mark, I still saw Mark during school. Me and him still hung up and just had that relationship. We were like friends online, he had me on Snapchat, him was still very much like involved with each other. And one night I got very, very drunk, and I drunk called Mark. I was so upset with my boyfriend at the time. I don't know, I just really wanted to speak to Mark about it, so he came and picked me up, and we were talking in the car for so many hours. Like, it got light outside, that's how long we were talking. And that night we also kissed. It was just a kiss. I really didn't know how to feel after it. I didn't really know I felt that way until we had that kiss, and then after that I couldn't stop thinking about him. But I knew how kind of like weird this kind of felt. I sat on this for a very long time, and that was until a few weeks ago where Mark actually asked me to go on a date, and he said he wanted to wait until Valentine's so I could be his Valentine's this year, and I just said yes. I thought I might as well clearly have these feelings for him and vice versa. So it is time for me to do my makeup, go on a date with my stepdad.
Am I the asshole for showing up to my ex's house after our daughter sent me a concerning message? My ex and I split when our daughter 13 was about 2, and have always had split custody 50-50. My ex remarried when our daughter was 5 and now has 2 younger kids. Her husband also has a son our daughter's age. I pay for a phone for her so she can keep in contact with both of us. She's smart with it, and it's never been an issue before. When she's at her mom's, she texts me quite a bit. She has cats here that she wants to be updated on mostly. Anyway, I dropped her off at school on Monday, and her mom picked her up as usual. She texted me on and off through school, and once more when she was picked up, but I didn't hear from her again that day. It was strange. She always messages me before bed, but I brushed it off. She's grown up. She'll stop texting me goodnight one day. On Tuesday, no messages again, so I shoot a text to her mom who doesn't reply. After school, I finally get a text from my daughter, which literally reads, "Daddy, help." That's it, no response after I message her back. Obviously, I'm thinking 101 things. I text her mom and call her, no reply. So I hop in my car and drive over, and she's fine-ish. She sees me, comes bolting out, asks if I can bring her home. I have a lot of questions, but apparently so does her stepdad. He comes storming out, asks what I think I'm doing, etc. It's their week, I shouldn't be picking her up yet. I explain my issue, he gets all big guy, and yells at my daughter for scaring me, which was not taken lightly by me. Anyway, turns out there was an electronics detox and all electronics have been locked away. My daughter got upset on Monday night, and her stepbrother made fun of her, which continued through the next day at school. She snuck onto her phone when she got home to text me, but got caught and had it locked away further. Her mom got home a few minutes after the initial argument, and I told her she shouldn't be doing something like this with my daughter without my approval. That phone is my property, and I say she can use it to contact me if need be. Lock it up during the day if you must, but let her say goodnight at least. She apologized for that, but stuck by her husband and the fact that I shouldn't have just shown up.
Am I the asshole for suing a makeup artist because she stood me up on the day of my wedding? Disclaimer, this is not my story, this is an anonymous submission. I, 28 female, got married in October to the love of my life. About 6 months before our wedding, I reached out to a makeup artist on Instagram. I am utterly clueless when it comes to makeup, and the most I wear is tinted sunscreen. I let her know that I needed makeup done for me and my 6 bridesmaids. We went back and forth for about 2 weeks before she sent over a contract outlining what we had spoken about. In the contract, it was pretty basic. I had to pay a deposit that would be considered non-refundable in the event that I canceled within 30 days before the wedding. The full amount discussed would have to be paid even if I had a bridesmaid that dropped out, and the full $1,500 needed to be paid 24 hours prior to her arrival. We had 2 different trials before my wedding. The costs for those were separate to what was stated in the contract. She even texted me the date before to confirm the location and time. The day of my wedding, I got a text from her letting me know that she was on her way and that she would arrive in 30 minutes. She never came. About 45 minutes later, I started calling her. No answer. We called her every 15 minutes after that. By now, she was about 3 hours late and my bridal party was scrambling around to see who could go where to get what items for my makeup. It worked out okay in the end. My maid of honor did my makeup and it was okay, but not like what I pictured for my big day. We're all a little lost when it comes to makeup, so I don't blame her. She tried her best and I love her so much. Part 2. Am I the asshole for suing a makeup artist because she stood me up on the day of my wedding? Disclaimer, this is not my story, this is an anonymous submission. During the wedding and reception, my wedding planner tried to get a hold of her, but eventually her phone started going straight to voicemail. My bridesmaids tried too, but they went straight to voicemail. I tried to get my bank to refund the charges, but they closed the case in her favor. She showed images from our trials, as well as my makeup being done and pictures from my wedding. I'm assuming she got those pictures off of Instagram or Facebook. After multiple attempts to contact her, my husband and I eventually got a lawyer and sued her for a full refund, plus the cost of the makeup that I needed to purchase to do my own, as well as emotional damages. We added emotional damages, not really expecting to get it, but in the end, the judge ruled in our favor and she was ordered to pay $4,500. Not exactly sure what happened to her, but I know this left her financially hurting. Now we're being harassed by her family and some of her following on Instagram for this, and it's made me wonder if I'm the asshole. All of this could have been avoided if she just issued a full refund for ghosting me. Instead, she chose to essentially flip us the bird. I know financially this wasn't going to impact us, but it was about her seeing her contract through. So, the asshole for suing a makeup artist because she stood me up on the day of my wedding? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
My sister's husband just proposed to me. Story time. So once upon a time, me and my sister's husband dated. So Mark is actually in my year at school. And we've always been super close friends, and we're in kind of year 7 to year 8. We were on and off in a relationship. So when my sister and Mark did get engaged, it kind of stung just a little bit. My sister is 2 years older than me. The reason it stung a little bit is because I actually lost my virginity to Mark. My sister did know I lost my virginity to Mark. We did have a conversation once they kind of started dating, and I did tell her like, oh, it is okay. Like, the good few years ago, I definitely don't have feelings for Mark anymore. In a way, I gave her my blessing. Obviously throughout the years their relationship definitely progressed. It really did feel just weird when he proposed to her, and I think when Mark fell on one knee, I realised I still had these feelings for him that I really didn't know I had. Obviously I love my sister and I did just leave this to the imagination for the longest time. So one night my sister went to bed early and it was just me and Mark downstairs. This was like very normal. We just got talking and brought up the conversation about how do I feel about him and my sister, because me and him have never spoken about it. And obviously I said to him, it's not like the most ideal situation in the world, but also I am just super happy for you both. And then as we continued talking, I did tell him that it really did hurt a bit and brought up feelings I didn't know I had when you proposed to my sister. One thing led to another and we actually ended up kissing that night. So obviously we kept this top secret for the longest time. However, it did keep happening. Obviously this left me and Mark in such a bad predicament because we both did feel really bad. However, we both realised we still have feelings for each other. To this day, no one still knows that we kissed. And people also don't know. 2 weeks ago, he proposed to me. We don't know how we're going to tell my sister or break it off with my sister, but that man gave me a ring.
Am I the asshole for laughing in my boyfriend's face when he suggests I be a stay-at-home mom? I recently found out that I'm pregnant with my boyfriend's child, and we've been dating for 3 years and our relationship is pretty good. We both want children eventually, although we did plan to have them a little bit later when we were more established in our careers. This definitely came as a surprise to us because I am on birth control and we use protection. We considered all of our options, but then we just eventually decided to keep the baby. I graduated last year and I have a pretty good job that pays okay money with the chance of promotion and future raises. My boyfriend works as an electrician and he also makes good money, so with both of our incomes, we should definitely be able to afford the baby. A couple days after we decided that we were going to keep the child, Andrew asked me and told me that he thought I should be a stay-at-home mom. He said that he believed that being a stay-at-home mom would be better for the baby. He said that he was raised by a stay-at-home mom and he loved it and he really wanted the same life for our baby. He said that he had been talking to his boss recently who agreed to give him a raise, and with that raise plus occasionally working overtime, he would be able to pay for literally everything. He said that he would also marry me to give me extra security. Am I the asshole for laughing in my boyfriend's face when he suggests I be a stay-at-home mom? I admit I literally burst into laughing because this was just insane to me. Like, sure, we could afford to have me be a stay-at-home mom, but that would actually require him budgeting every single penny that he made. Also, I just graduated last year. Does he think that I went to college for 4 years so that I could be staying at home doing his laundry and cooking his meals? And what if he gets sick? or dies. Not to mention, I am the first person in my entire family to get their degree, and I'm extremely proud of that. I could tell that he was pretty upset with my reaction and he was sad, but he just decided to accept my decision and he didn't even argue. I was talking to one of my friends about this and she told me that she thought it was really mean of me to laugh in his face like I did. And she was saying that Andrew was offering a really nice thing by offering to take care of me and our baby. And I told her that I didn't mean it to come off that way. That was just my initial reaction because I actually thought that it was so insane and stupid that I couldn't help but laugh. I really want to know, am I the asshole?
Let me tell you the story of how I woke up to my husband and best friend getting on next to me. Story time. If I'm being honest, I feel like I've never fully liked my husband. Never really treated me correctly. I always thought I could get way better somewhere else. However, it was just one of them relationships that kind of progressed, and before I knew it, we were married and I was pregnant. Mark had been together for about 15 years now, and we have been married for 5. We met when we were 15. We obviously did get married very, very young, but I have quite traditional parents where there was no way we were going to be blessed to live in together and sleep together and all of that jazz if we were not married or engaged. We kind of just decided to do it. So I met one of my best friends at university. We got on like a literal house on fire. I don't know, I really believed she was my soulmate as a friend, but she has always had boy issues and it's always been such a joke between us because she's never been able to settle down. If I'm being completely honest, my best friend Natalie has always made quite inappropriate comments to Mark. That's who we'll be calling my husband. I always just brushed it off. I don't know if it was because, one, I just didn't care that much, and 2, I just felt so secure in mine and Mark's relationship. So as Natalie was trying to find a job in her major, me and Mark kind of let her stay at our house as much as she wanted to. I just enjoyed having her around so much and I would do anything for that girl. It was very common that like I would go to bed earlier because I had to be up early for work, and Natalie and Mark were just downstairs talking. Like, this was very common. And one thing about Mark is he is a restless sleeper. Hear movement, screaming, I don't know, literally anything during the night is most probably Mark because he sleepwalks, he sleep talks. I'm very used to kind of being woken up and like I'm literally on a boat because Mark can't keep still. And there was this one night a few weeks ago where I woke up and I felt the bed moving a lot. I was undecided whether to turn around, look at Mark, or if to kind of just leave him be. To be honest, it weren't really moving any more than normal. It was just annoying. However, in the end, I kind of did decide just to let Mark sleep his little heart out, I guess. However, I woke up to what felt like an hour later, but in reality, it was about 10 minutes. And the bed was still rocking really bad. So I can't speak whilst doing my lip liner. So I decided to turn around and wake Mark up. However, when I turned around, I saw Natalie on top of Mark. And to be honest, I don't know what to think.
My father was recently questioned by a cop regarding a 45-year-old cold case for a missing woman. He's not a suspect, but a few days later, another police officer called him and asked him to come into the station to discuss it further. Should he lawyer up? I feel like I answered my own question with the title, but wants to know if I'm being paranoid or not. My father had an acquaintance, 17-year-old girl, he was a few years older, who went missing in the late 1970s. She was never found, and the case has been completely unsolved since. The other day, my parents got a knock on the door, and it was a detective who asked to speak with my father. From what my dad told me, he essentially asked for all of my father's recollections about this woman. My dad told the cop everything he remembered about the woman, which isn't much, and the cop left without saying anything happening. The cop did tell my dad why he paid the visit, which is apparently because one of my dad's former friends called a police station and said my dad might have information about her disappearance. This former friend is a nut and a conspiracy theorist who has an axe to grind against my dad, so we think he's just trying to screw with my dad by assisting up the cops on him for no reason. Another officer called my dad today and asked him to come down to the station this coming Friday morning. He had no idea why, they apparently just wanted to discuss it further with him. I'm going to call the State Bar Association tomorrow to get in touch with a criminal defense lawyer. I don't know if I'm being paranoid or not, but the whole thing reeks to me and I admittedly don't trust the cops in general. I basically don't want my dad to get screwed. Is it too much to go in with a lawyer for something like this?
I married my brother's fiance, and I don't know how to tell him. Disclaimer, this is not my story, this is an anonymous submission. I, 25 female, have been with my fiance Rick, 26 male, for 3 years. Our wedding is supposed to take place in June. Deposits have been paid, hotels have been booked, and we both have our families flying in. Fiance's best friend David chose to have an elopement in Vegas, so his entire friend group and their significant others all packed up and joined them. Here's where it all goes downhill. Dave and his bride wanted to get married at the Taco Bell chapel, but it turns out they do not provide the marriage license, so we chose to treat that first night as a bachelor and bachelorette party and get them their marriage license the next morning and then come back. We all went out as a group. I will say, after the first 3 drinks is where my memory starts to become foggy, but I do know that sometime between drink number 5 and 3 a.m., I got married to Rick's brother, Tom, 28 male. When I woke up the next morning, it was exactly how you'd probably picture it. That cliched, extremely hungover, and when my eyes focused, I noticed a simple gold band in place of my engagement ring. Panic was not my initial reaction until I noticed the man next to me was my soon-to-be brother-in-law. Things were all over the room, so I knew I was in the correct room, so he must be the one who was out of place. Looking around, I saw 0 signs of my fiancé. I did spot the marriage certificate that had been issued. Part 2. I married my fiancé's brother, and I don't know how to tell him. Disclaimer, this is not my story, this is an anonymous submission. Looking around the room, I saw 0 signs of my fiancé. I did spot the marriage certificate that had been issued to Tom and I, and that's when my freakout began. It took about 10 minutes to get Tom to wake up and bring him up to speed on what just happened. And now here we were, 2 complete idiots, legally married, with 0 idea how this happened. There was no evidence on his phone, and my phone was absolutely smashed, so I had no way of knowing if I had captured anything of what happened. When we eventually met up with the rest of their group, we didn't mention what we had found in our room, and no one had any idea of how we even made it back to our rooms that night. Dave and his wife finally got married, and it's been about a month since then. Tom wants to get this resolved without Rick finding out, because he knows this would ruin any possible relationship either of us could have with him. I feel he has a right to know, because I'm terrified he could find out in 20 years and it would be the reason our marriage ends. But I do understand Tom wanting to
friend. So much to the fact where they actually refuse to come around my house now. I get it, because I would be the same. Whereas me and my mum have always been so close. She is my best friend. So even though my dad is a weirdo, and I've always just felt, I guess, slightly uncomfortable around him. Obviously, we did get on, and he was my dad no matter what at the end of the day. I'll give you a brief overview of me and my still fiance. So me and Mark met in college. Really was love at first sight. We dated for about 5 years before he popped the question to me, and he did it whilst we were on holiday, and it was just so perfect. I did always feel like my dad had a bit of animosity towards Mark. However, I really did think he was just like being an overprotective dad and kind of doing his duty to make sure Mark was treating me right. I did not think it was because my dad secretly loved me. So when me and Mark started planning the wedding, oh my god, I should have noticed, my dad was throwing so many hints towards me. The first day me and Mark chose, Dad suddenly said that he couldn't come and that he really wanted us to change it because obviously he wanted to be a part of it. We decided to go with another day, and honestly we went through 5 dates, finally agreed to one. So the date of my wedding finally comes, and my dad was asking a lot of questions. And to be fair, Mark did point this out. Mark was saying how weird it was, like the questions my dad was asking, but once again I just kind of thought it was down to him being overprotective. He was asking like the exact to the second schedule of the day. Obviously we told him as much as we could, but he really wanted to know the time, like going to say I do. It obviously comes just after, oh, if anyone has anything they want to say it now. I know this now. So by the day of the wedding, I was about to walk down the aisle, and obviously I asked my dad to walk me down the aisle, and he didn't show up, and I thought this was so weird, and I was actually quite worried. Obviously I did need to get married, so I ended up just walking down the aisle without him, and except for that little mishap, the whole rest of the wedding went like perfectly. It finally gets to the question that we didn't think was going to be an issue of, if anyone wants to stop this wedding, speak now. And when he came running in and saying I do, we all laughed so much, because obviously we thought, oh my god, he was like stupidly late. Like, we found it really funny, and obviously did not think he was being serious. Obviously everyone laughs it off, and we expect my dad to sit down and kind of join the wedding, and he doesn't. Once again the question gets asked, does anyone have anything to say? Because obviously we thought it needs to be done properly. My dad still replies saying I do, and this is when like all the faces dropped, because we realized he was being dead serious. And if you don't know, when this happens to your wedding, you then have to wait to get married. I think it's for 30 days. That was when my dad confessed he is in love with me. He was like, I cannot let you marry Mark. It was like, it should be me taking that place. I generally thought this man could not get any weirder.
Today I fucked up by confusing meat thermometers with tire pressure gauges. I recently started a new job at a trucking company. I've been looking at the tires and thinking they're kinda low, and I've been using this thing they gave me to try and check the tire pressure. They gave me 2 of them. For 2 weeks, I hear air come out of the tires when I try to use them, and the needle never moves. I ask, and I'm told you need to do it a certain way to get it to work. No dice. Oh well, I'll just ask them about it next time I'm in the shop. This morning, I walk up into the maintenance shop and ask them why this thing isn't working. Did the company give me a broken tire pressure gauge? He pulls me aside and says it's not working because it's a thermometer. So if you ever feel like you did something stupid and feel bad about it, refer back to here. Mind you, I only justify my reasoning with why would a trucking company give out a cooking thermometer to new employees? Nah, maybe I was unlucky enough to be given 2 bad gauges.